They used to be warm, open, trusting, vulnerable. Then something happened. Now they are ice. You call this healing. It is not. You believe people become cold because they are strong, because they have learned not to let others hurt them, because they have grown up and stopped being naive. You think emotional detachment is maturity, that building walls is wisdom, that refusing vulnerability is self-protection, that proves they have healed from what hurt them. But coldness is not healing. It is freezing the wound before it can be treated. It is numbing yourself so completely that you cannot feel the pain anymore, but you also cannot feel anything else. It is choosing to die emotionally rather than risk being hurt again. The person who becomes cold after being hurt has not processed the trauma. They have encased it in ice and built their entire personality around never letting it thaw. They have not learned to love better or choose better or protect themselves wisely. They have learned to not love at all, to not choose connection, to protect themselves by refusing to be human anymore. You watch someone transform from warm to cold and you think they became strong. They did not become strong. They became defended. They built fortress around their heart, not because they healed, but because they could not tolerate healing, could not face the vulnerability that recovery requires, could not risk feeling the full weight of what hurt them. So they froze it, buried it, built walls around it, and called the walls strength. This is not recovery. This is psychological amputation, cutting off the capacity for connection to avoid the pain that connection can bring. Understanding why this happens requires examining what coldness actually protects and what it costs. Someone betrayed them, deeply, completely, in the way that shatters their understanding of reality. They thought they were safe. They were not. You call this a learning experience. They call it proof that vulnerability is dangerous. Here is what happens. They trusted someone completely. They were vulnerable, open, emotionally available. They showed their real self, the fears, the needs, the imperfections, the depths. And that person used it against them, or left, or betrayed them, or proved they were not who they pretended to be. The vulnerability that was supposed to create intimacy became weapon used to hurt them. This is not minor disappointment. This is foundational betrayal. They opened themselves completely and were punished for it. They gave someone access to their internal world, and that person either weaponized the access or simply did not value it enough to protect it. They learned through devastating experience that showing people who you really are creates opportunity for catastrophic harm. The pain is bad enough, but what makes it unbearable is what it destroys, their ability to trust their own judgment. They thought they were safe. They thought they knew this person. They thought the relationship was real. They were completely wrong. And if they were that wrong about something they felt certain about, how can they ever trust their perception again? This creates existential crisis. If you cannot trust your judgment about who is safe, if your instincts led you into a situation that destroyed you, if the person you thought you knew was actually someone completely different, then you cannot trust yourself to navigate relationships. You cannot trust your ability to recognize safe people. You cannot trust that you will see danger before it is too late. The coldness is response to this crisis. If you cannot trust your judgment, you must stop making judgments. If you cannot tell who is safe, you must treat everyone as dangerous. If vulnerability creates opportunity for catastrophic harm, you must never be vulnerable again. The coldness is not strength, it is decision to eliminate the risk by eliminating the capacity for connection entirely. They have not learned to choose better or see more clearly. They have learned to not choose at all, to not see anyone clearly because seeing requires getting close enough to be hurt. The coldness protects them from repeating the mistake, but it also prevents them from ever having what they lost. They showed someone their real self, the messy parts, the broken parts, the parts they usually hide. That person left, or stayed but made it clear those parts were not acceptable. You call this incompatibility. They call it confirmation that their real self is too much or not enough. The coldness often develops not from dramatic betrayal but from quieter rejection. They were vulnerable about their needs, and the person made them feel needy. They shared their struggles, and the person acted like the struggles were burdens. They showed their emotions, and the person responded with discomfort or judgment or withdrawal. They revealed their fears, and the person used those fears to manipulate them or simply lost respect for them. Every time they were real and it was not received well, they learned to be less real. Every time they expressed need and it was treated as excessive, they learned to need less, or at least to never show that they need. Every time they were emotional and it caused problems, they learned to be less emotional. They adapted by hiding more, performing more, revealing less. Eventually they were in relationship or friendship where they were completely performing, where none of their actual self was visible, where they were managing every interaction to avoid triggering the rejection or judgment or withdrawal they learned to expect. They were not connected, they were hiding in plain sight, maintaining relationship by never being themselves in it. Then one of two things happened. Either the relationship ended anyway despite all their performing, proving that even the false self is not enough. Or they could not maintain the performance anymore, and when the real self emerged, the relationship ended, proving that the real self was never going to be acceptable. Both outcomes teach the same lesson. You are too much or not enough, and either way you are not acceptable as you are. Your needs are excessive. Your emotions are problematic. Your vulnerabilities are weaknesses that make you unlovable. The only way to be accepted is to not be yourself, and even that does not work reliably. The coldness is decision to stop trying, to stop hoping that someone will accept the real version, to stop performing because performance failed too, to stop being vulnerable because vulnerability has never been met with the safety and acceptance it requires. They have learned that showing people who you are leads to rejection, so they stop showing people anything at all. They keep trying, keep hoping, keep believing this time will be different. This person will be different. They open up again and get hurt again. You call this bad luck. They call it evidence that they are the problem. The coldness often develops not from single catastrophic hurt, but from pattern of repeated hurts. They get betrayed, they recover, they try again. They get rejected, they heal, they risk vulnerability again. They get used, they rebuild themselves, they open up to someone new, and every time, despite their best efforts to choose differently, to see more clearly, to protect themselves better, they get hurt again. This pattern creates devastating conclusion. The problem is not the specific people who hurt them. The problem is them. They are the common denominator. They keep choosing people who hurt them, or they keep doing something that makes people hurt them, or they are fundamentally unlovable in ways they cannot see, but others can. The pattern proves that something about them attracts betrayal, or creates conditions for rejection, or makes them target for people who use others. This is when coldness becomes total. When you believe you are the problem but cannot identify what the problem is, cannot fix whatever is wrong with you, cannot stop the pattern no matter how hard you try, the only solution is to stop participating. To remove yourself from situations where your unidentified flaw will create the pain you can predict but cannot prevent. The coldness is not confidence that they have figured out the problem. It is exhaustion from failing to solve it. They have tried changing who they choose, changing how they behave, changing what they reveal, changing how much they give. Nothing works. They keep getting hurt. So they stop trying. They decide the only way to prevent the inevitable hurt is to never put themselves in position to be hurt. They do not trust themselves to choose well because they have chosen badly repeatedly. They do not trust themselves to see red flags because they have missed them repeatedly. They do not trust themselves to protect their boundaries because they have failed to protect them repeatedly. The coldness is admission that they cannot navigate relationships successfully, combined with decision to stop trying rather than continue failing. They are not strong. They are defeated. The coldness is surrender disguised as strength, giving up disguised as growing up, accepting that they cannot have healthy relationships disguised as choosing not to have any relationships. They felt everything, too deeply, too intensely. It was overwhelming. The joy was ecstatic. The pain was unbearable. You call this being emotional. They call it being out of control in ways that create chaos. Some people become cold not just because others hurt them, but because their own emotions hurt them. They feel everything so intensely that emotions become unmanageable, become destabilizing, become source of suffering they cannot escape. The heartbreak is not just sadness, it is month of not being able to function. The betrayal is not just disappointment, it is collapse of their sense of reality. The rejection is not just hurt, it is confirmation of every fear they have about their own inadequacy. When emotions are this intense, when you cannot regulate them, when they take over completely and prevent you from functioning, feeling becomes dangerous. Not because others hurt you, but because you hurt yourself through the intensity of your own emotional experience. You cannot handle the pain when it comes, cannot recover within reasonable time frame, cannot maintain stability through normal relationship difficulties. The coldness develops as emotional regulation strategy. If you cannot manage emotions when they arise, you must prevent them from arising. If feelings overwhelm you when you have them, you must stop having feelings. If emotional intensity creates chaos in your life, you must eliminate emotional intensity. You cannot moderate, you only have on or off, so you choose off. This is not the same as healthy emotional regulation where you feel emotions but manage them appropriately. This is shutting down the entire system because you cannot control it when it is activated. This is recognizing that your emotional responses are disproportionate to triggers and deciding that the solution is to stop responding rather than learning to respond proportionately. They become cold not because they are strong enough to not feel, but because they are not strong enough to feel without being destroyed by the feeling. The coldness is not emotional mastery, it is emotional amputation, cutting off the capacity to feel deeply because deep feeling was causing damage they could not manage. But they do not frame it this way. They frame it as growing up, as becoming mature, as learning not to be controlled by emotions. They tell themselves and others that they have developed emotional strength. Actually, they have developed emotional shutdown. They mistake numbness for stability, detachment for regulation, coldness for control. They watch you be warm, be open, be vulnerable. They see it as weakness now, as naivety they have outgrown. You call this judgment. They call it seeing clearly what you refuse to see. Here is the dark part. Once someone becomes cold as defense mechanism, they begin to despise warmth in others. Your openness looks like the vulnerability that got them hurt. Your trust looks like the naivety that allowed them to be betrayed. Your emotional availability looks like the lack of boundaries that led to them being used. They see their former self in you and they judge it harshly because judging you justifies their transformation. If warmth is wisdom, then their coldness is mistake. If vulnerability is strength, then their detachment is weakness. If openness creates connection, then their walls create isolation. They cannot allow this to be true because they have built entire identity around the coldness being superior to the warmth they lost. So they must believe that you are naive, that you have not learned what they learned, that you will eventually get hurt the way they did, and then you will understand why coldness is necessary. They become contemptuous of people who are still willing to risk vulnerability. They mock emotional expression as dramatic or excessive. They frame others' needs as neediness, others' emotions as instability, others' trust as foolishness. They have to believe that coldness is evolution beyond warmth rather than recognizing it as defense mechanism that prevents growth. This contempt also protects them from longing for what they lost. If they acknowledge that warmth is valuable, that openness creates genuine connection, that vulnerability enables intimacy, they would have to feel the grief of what they have sacrificed to feel safe. They would have to recognize that the coldness that protects them also imprisons them. They would have to acknowledge that they are not superior to warm people, but are defended in ways that prevent them from having what warm people can have. So they maintain the belief that cold is better than warm, that detachment is wiser than connection, that emotional unavailability is strength rather than limitation. They need you to be wrong about your warmth so they can be right about their coldness. They need your vulnerability to fail so their refusal to be vulnerable is justified. The judgment is not really about you, it is about protecting their defense mechanism from examination. They built the walls to keep pain out. The walls keep everything out. They cannot feel hurt. They also cannot feel joy, cannot feel love, cannot feel connection. You call this protection. They call it the only way to survive. The coldness that protects from pain also eliminates capacity for positive emotion. You cannot selectively numb. When you shut down vulnerability to hurt, you shut down vulnerability to everything. The walls that keep people from hurting you also keep people from reaching you, from mattering to you, from connecting with you. The detachment that prevents betrayal from destroying you also prevents love from affecting you. They are safe now, safe from being hurt again, safe from trusting wrong person, safe from being too vulnerable, but they are also alone in their safety. They cannot let anyone close because closeness creates risk. They cannot love deeply because love requires vulnerability they have eliminated. They cannot form genuine intimate connections because intimacy requires showing the real self they have learned to keep hidden. They tell themselves they prefer it this way. They say they do not need relationships, do not want emotional closeness, are better off alone. They frame their isolation as choice, their emotional unavailability as preference, their inability to connect as not wanting to connect. They have convinced themselves that the fortress they built is home rather than prison. But occasionally, in moments they do not share with anyone, they recognize what they lost when they chose safety over connection. They see others experiencing the warmth and intimacy they can no longer access. They feel the loneliness that coldness creates. They know that the walls that protect them also isolate them. They understand that they are safe, but they are also alone, and the aloneness is different kind of pain than the hurt they were avoiding. The tragedy is that the coldness does not actually eliminate pain. It just changes the source of pain from acute betrayal or rejection to chronic isolation and disconnection. They traded the risk of being hurt by others for the guarantee of being cut off from others. They chose certain loneliness over possible intimacy because the loneliness feels safer than the vulnerability. They are not healed. They are not strong. They are defended in ways that prevent healing, protected in ways that create different kind of suffering, safe in ways that ensure they never have what they actually need. The coldness solved the immediate problem of being hurt while creating the permanent problem of being unable to connect. Some of them recognize the cost, want to change, want to feel again, want to risk connection, but they cannot. The coldness has become their identity. You call this choice. They call it being permanently altered by what hurt them. The saddest cases are people who recognize that coldness is prison, who want to be warm again, who understand they are sacrificing connection for safety that is not actually making them happy, but who cannot find the way back. The coldness has been maintained so long that it has become structural. The walls have been up so long that they do not know how to take them down. The emotions have been shut down so completely that they cannot access them anymore even when they want to. They try to open up and nothing comes out. They try to be vulnerable and the words feel performative, disconnected from any real feeling. They try to let someone in and they cannot. The automatic defenses activate, the walls go back up, the coldness returns before they can stop it. The protection mechanism has become automatic, beyond conscious control. They also fear that if they let the walls down, they will not just feel the current emotions, they will feel all the frozen pain from every hurt they never processed, every betrayal they never grieved, every rejection they never allowed themselves to fully feel. The coldness has been holding back years or decades of accumulated pain, and removing it feels like it will flood them with suffering they cannot survive. So they remain cold not because they choose it, but because they are trapped in it. They have maintained the defense so long that it is no longer defense they can choose to drop. It is structure of their personality, automatic response they cannot override, way of being they cannot unlearn. The coldness that was supposed to be temporary protection became permanent state. They watch others form connections they cannot form, experience emotions they cannot access, risk vulnerability they cannot tolerate. They know they are missing what matters most about being human. But they also know they cannot risk being hurt again the way they were hurt before. So they remain frozen, protected but isolated, safe but alone, defended but unable to have what makes life worth living. They are not cold because they want to be. They are cold because they do not know how to be anything else anymore. People become cold after being hurt because coldness is psychological defense mechanism. Not healing, not strength, not wisdom. Defense that protects from pain while preventing everything else. They became cold because someone betrayed them when they were vulnerable and they concluded vulnerability is dangerous. Because someone rejected their real self and they concluded their real self is unacceptable. Because they kept getting hurt despite trying to choose better and they concluded they are the problem. Because their emotions were too intense to manage and they shut down the entire system. Because warmth led to pain and they needed the pain to stop. The coldness protects them from being hurt again. But it also eliminates their capacity for connection, for intimacy, for love, for joy. The walls that keep pain out keep everything out. The detachment that prevents betrayal from destroying them also prevents relationships from mattering. The numbness that makes rejection bearable also makes life feel empty. They are not healed. They have encased the wound in ice and built their personality around never letting it thaw. They have not learned to love better. They have learned to not love at all. They have not developed wisdom about relationships. They have developed defenses that prevent them from having relationships. They have not become strong. They have become defended in ways that prevent genuine strength from developing. The coldness is not superior to warmth. It is not evolution beyond naivety. It is not proof of growth or maturity. It is defense mechanism that prevents healing, protection that creates prison, safety that guarantees isolation. Real healing would mean feeling the pain they are avoiding, processing the hurts they have frozen, learning to be vulnerable again despite the risk. It would mean taking down the walls, accessing the emotions, risking connection even though connection can hurt. It would mean choosing possible pain over guaranteed loneliness. Most people who become cold never do this healing. They remain frozen, protected, isolated. They convince themselves they prefer it this way. They judge warmth as weakness to justify their coldness. But coldness is not strength. It is wound that never healed, transformed into way of being that prevents healing. It is choosing to die emotionally rather than risk living fully again.